All right, so call to order for Berlin Finance Committee. Open session public meetings are subject to being recorded. Your image and voice will be recorded. All right, let's get our first order of business done, the minutes. We have a motion to approve the minutes.
I move that we approve them as Julie changed that one as edited, the one edit.
Have a second?
Yes, I'll second that.
All right, any other discussion on it? Okay, roll call, Scott, aye.
Mary, I.
Cliff, I.
Julie, I'm.
All right, passes 4-0. And no reserve fund transfers, speak, right?
Nope.
All right, so we'll just get to the business of the budget.
All right, I realized I didn't put the pretty PDF on there along with the Excel. So I'm just putting the PDF on there. It's a little bit easier to look at. Okay, so we just have a couple of line items left to vote on, and I went through and looked at all of the formulas today, as I do, since there's been a lot of moving around in the budget, and I want to make sure everything's correct. And I found I did have a formula that was off. It worked slightly to our advantage, though, actually, in that what happened was the local property tax was pointing to the budget as estimated at town meeting and not the actual recap budget for FY24. So there's actually a small amount of levy that wasn't being captured when you do the multiplication to 2.5%. So it did increase it by about $29,000. So, which worked out really well, because one of the reasons I haven't had you vote on chapter 32B, the health insurance line item yet, is June had given me two proposals. One where we have to set aside a certain number of extra spots every year, because we don't know who's going to come on to the plan. New employees might come onto the plan. We ideally would like to have 3 spots, but I only had enough money in the budget for 2. Now I have enough for 3. So this is, I believe, what should be the final budget, provided when I go through it for the 8th time, I don't find another formula error.
Okay. I was going to say, do you want to share that? Because
Oh, I
it's
didn't
not
share it. I'm
showing up.
sorry.
And if you can close the
Thank you.
window with us on it,
This one doesn't let.
it should give you the.
When I minimize
Look
it.
at ourselves over there.
Yeah.
As
Oh,
long
there
as
we
it
go.
ends up blocking.
How's
what-
that? If I
Yes,
put it
good.
like at least down, like, yeah,
Yeah.
I hide it down there. Oh, yeah, but wait, I have to share first.
Can you see, or do you want me to?
I'm share screen.
Yeah,
There we
because I
go.
have a copy on my desktop
Okay.
if I want to get into something.
All right, there we go. So let me move you again. There we go. Okay, so if that was all mud, I apologize. But what we are at now is we're still balanced. We just were able to pick up a bit on the revenue side, which is not a bad thing. As I was mentioning, it went into the chapter 32 for that extra slot that I was hoping we would be able to fund. So everything remains the same, except the property tax levy was adjusted slightly based upon the 2.5% number, since the formula was just pointing to the town meeting budgeted number as opposed to the actual number on the recap. So corrected that, and our new total revenue, 16,931,560. As you can see, the budget is at 16,931,560. I'll show you when we get to the expense page, but I have now shifted over to the town meeting column on the expense page. And in order to make this match, I had to plug in my recommendations in the holes, which obviously you can vote and change. But I just want you to know, when you flip over and you see like, hey, I didn't vote for that yet. That was just to make it balanced for right now. You obviously can change it.
Can you
And then-
move the you are sharing as well? It keeps showing up in your,
The green thing.
yeah, can it like just slide out of the,
how do I move?
Can you just move it, drag it to the top?
yeah, that should let you drag it, right?
Anyway,
Why is that-
yeah, keep your
Ah.
mouse down. and
There
just-
we go. Sorry, this mouse is a little funky. Is
Okay.
that better?
Yeah, because
Yeah,
it's just going in the middle of your.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay, sorry, I'm forgetting you can see that too. All right, so where this brings us then out in what I believe should be close to final, if not final, would be with total budget, as I just mentioned, of 16,931,560. And that does leave the excess levy capacity at 1,636,739. And you'll see that reflected as we go to, oops, sorry, went the wrong way, as we go to page 2. Everything has remained the same here in terms of the state aid estimates, the local receipts estimates that I went through with you last time. No other changes to this page. So any questions on the revenues?
No,
No.
No.
Okay,
No.
and I will jump down to maybe if it'll let me, to the expenditures. And that's really small, so I'm gonna make that much larger. Okay. So there aren't too many left to vote on, which is a positive thing, because you're very close. In fact, the select board left only, I believe it was either 3 or 4 line items unvoted upon that they wanted slightly more information on. They did take their vote on the schools, including potential capital funding, which they said would be subject to change if the capital committee votes a different way. But they wanted to go ahead and, take their votes on that. So the first item for you this evening to vote on, and of course, now that I did this, you can't see the line item number. Let me scoot over a little. So we're talking about lines 18 through 22. This is the assessor salary. This was approved by the select board. We did have some calculation changes in the COLAs. We had to go back and fix the full-time salary for the assessor. And there was also a adjustment in the part-time wages that shouldn't have been there. So the readjusted numbers are here, and I don't believe you voted on any of them yet. No. The select board has voted or recommended to approve all of those line items. So questions on the assessor budget? You can see it behind. I know, I feel like I'm blocking the TV.
No, you're fine.
Okay, all right.
We should tape this out. The tables and the TV.
Map it out. So yeah.
We finally figured out after 4 meetings.
I know where to put everything. Yeah, we'll mark it on the floor. All right, so that is the first, and that is the only one for a while. So if you want to take a vote on lines 18 through 22.
okay, so just do as last time. Do a motion for lines 18 through 22 to approve the as recommended by the town administrator and the select board. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, any other discussion? Okay, roll call. Spada.
Mary, I.
Cliff, eye.
Julia,
Okay,
Right, approved 4-0.
great. And then this is a revote actually for the select board. You voted on that increase of $4,000 to the expense line item for fire and EMS. Of course, there's always those hidden fees. I feel like I'm like a credit card company. They're telling us now that yes, it's $4,000 a year, but there's a one-time cost of $12,000 to build out the software, which we're disputing because we already have the online permitting. And we did look because the module is built out. It's there. It just doesn't have all of the information, and it's Berlin specific. So we're going back and forth right now with the permitting company. The chief thinks that we probably can negotiate a bit with them, and he may be able to cover that one-time cost out of some of his expenses in FY23, because he was hoping to actually switch over to this sooner rather than later, and do it this year, because obviously we have a permitting online, platform that isn't really working as such.
In 24.
So 23, 4, sorry, I'm going back in time. In 24, thank you.
These years, these are
We're working
hard.
in 3 years. right now.
That's the problem.
We're
We're, yeah,
thinking about the fourth.
I
yeah.
think Massachusetts would go to a January, December budget year,
So nice.
because then it'll ruin your holidays, but. But,
Yes,
uh,
you scared me there for a minute. I was like, am I talking in there? Yeah, thank you.
no,
24.
on this permitting software, I mean, the vendor doesn't have to come in and start from scratch. That's the point, right?
Exactly.
And that's what the $12,000 installation fee is about.
To
so-
build out the fire module, they're saying, because there's
Yeah.
only a building permit module, but they did a little digging and apparently the fire module is there. It just needs to be built to our specifications, which we can't figure out how that could be $12,000. We're just not that big and not that complicated. So it really shouldn't be that expensive. So we did manage to talk them down from $20,000 to $4,000. So I have confidence we'll be able to work this piece out. The FinCom did already vote to approve that $4,000, but because of that new information, I held off on, it was one of those, but wait, there's more. I
And did
held
the
off
select
on
board
the
vote on
select
this?
board. Nope, the select board previously voted without the $4,000. So this is a number they would have to re-vote on, but I was waiting to get the information on where we were gonna pay for the $12,000 before I had them take a re-vote. The FinCom voted on the increased number last time, before we knew about the 12,000. So stay tuned, but I think that we're gonna be able to work it out. I just wanted to share that with you. So that one's not for you. Just to
Okay.
be confusing.
So you don't want us to vote on that one?
Nope, you already voted on it, so you're in the clear on that one. I just wanted to give you updated information that I didn't have the select board vote on it yet because I was trying to figure out.
Okay,
the
I got
12,000.
confused. So you're not changing the amount, you're just changing the information to the select board.
Right, I didn't have the select board vote the extra 4,000 yet because I kind of pumped the brakes when I saw the $12,000 number because it's just scared me. So, yeah, it scares me. So then what I would be asking you to look at would be lines 68, 69, and 70. This is actually a re-vote on highway full-time wages, part-time wages, and expenses, and I will explain why. Initially, that seasonal mowing highway employee was in the full-time wages by mistake. So that has been taken out and put into wages part-time, and it has been turned from 1 additional seasonal landscaping position to 2. The reason it's been turned into 2 is because we had a conversation with Recreation about mowing the irrigated fields. They grow faster, they stay longer, and it requires a lot more mowing once you renovate those fields with irrigation. So I had them get a quote of what it would cost to have an outside contractor come in and maintain just the fields on the right side of the school. It's $22,000 a year. So I sat down with Fred and I said, what do you think? And he goes, well, that's a crazy number. And I said, I agree. And I said, do you think maybe if we added another seasonal worker, that might help take the burden off? Because they do supplement with the highway people. And we also have Ken Patton, who's our building maintenance operator, that can fill in those times of years when, it's often students that do the summer positions. So he felt that with another hand around that time of year, that he could make it work in-house and we wouldn't have to spend the 22,000 on mowing. But again, depending on how you vote on Recreation, I'm not comfortable moving forward with Recreation's proposal without having the plan for the mowing in place. So that's why it's here. And then the $5,000 for expenses has just been removed and moved into a special article for the bucket truck. So if you look at the free cash plan, which I'll skip down to here. I know I was gonna say, making everyone dizzy, sorry. Let me minimize a little bit here. So if you look at the free cash plan, the $5,000 has just been moved here as a one-time fund to get the bucket truck revolving fund off the ground. I am also working on the town of Clinton, because according to our intermunicipal agreement, they are supposed to match funding. And I now have someone on the inside helping. So hopefully we'll be able to get that funding from Clinton, but that doesn't impact the budget because we would just be receiving that into the revolving fund. So anyone from Clinton is watching? please give us our $5,000. We're working on it. One other change while I'm on this free cash plan page, and I will be showing you the warrant shortly, is OPEB. The select board did reduce the OPEB amount to $85,000 to put in for the first year. The free cash plan is obviously a plan and guideline, and it does recommend around, or does recommend 10% rather for OPEB. For the long-term liability, given all of the capital needs that are out there and the uncertainties around the facility study, they wanted to start with half of that amount for year one. And, most communities don't fund even 10% of their liability. So, they wanted to start small. So that is a change there, which leaves a little bit extra free cash on the table. As you can see, we'd be proposing to roll over just shy of $700,000 to next year's free cash, the next year's free cash rather.
Well, I remember earlier having discussion that there was a certain threshold number that you need to reach before you can put it into an investment account.
There is,
And what was that dollar amount?
at
again?
least with PERAC, which is one of the investment options we've looked into, it's 250,000. So we weren't going to hit it this year anyways.
Well, I think that was one of the discussions was at that time was, do we
Mhm.
pump up it up
Yep.
and just make sure we hit 250 to be able to do that? So now it'll take longer and
And how much did they say we were aiming for? Was it 300 or?
Our liability
Yeah,
is 3 million.
3
Our
million.
long-term liability, which sounds like a big scary number, but if anyone's watched
But with the investing,
with the investing, it will help. And I could tell you, my former community had a liability that was more like 9 million, and they were putting in 35,000 a
Mhm.
year. Really, they want to see that you're making a concerted effort to annually put something aside for it.
Mhm.
Obviously more is better when it comes to the investment, as you mentioned, but I also understand the sticker shock of year one of this and wanting to,
Mhm.
put it on town meeting and having the voters look at it. And I don't want to speak for the select board, but from listening to the context of the conversation, I think it was, let's just take a little jump because we already had to add 45,000 into the health insurance line item for this year's premiums.
Well, that had been my question, if we had to put the whole amount in right away.
Only the
anyway,
annual
so-
premiums.
So because we still have the money, so if we're seeing a need, it's not like we're immediately spending it on something else.
Correct. It's not going anywhere. It's just gonna roll over to next year.
Mhm.
What was our free cash going into this? What was the total amount?
$1,777,874.
this was the 10% on it, so we just add another zero,
Yes,
essentially. It was a 4.
Yeah. So they're roughly half, that's what I was trying to.
Yeah, yeah.
roughly.
yeah, except you take the 25% off. Yeah,
Yeah.
messes you up a little bit, but. All right, so that, and we can talk a little bit more about that when you get to the warrant. We get to the warrant rather. I just wanted to point that out since we were on the free cash page. So that's highway. Transfer station, we do have an article on the warrant to turn this into a possible revolving fund. The dollar amounts would remain the same. The way that we would break it up could be potentially different between the operating, what we leave in operating budget, which I would recommend personnel wages stay in the operating budget and some amount of the expenses. But what I asked the select board to do is vote on the overall budget request. And then I actually sent the warrant to town council today to get a little bit of guidance on how best to break that out and how do we do it? Because if the revolving fund doesn't pass, do I need to have a substitute motion for changing the budget? But we always have the budget first. So there's a little bit of like the cart before the horse, chicken and egg kind of thing going on. So what I would be asking you to do right now is to just vote if you're comfortable with their budget amounts, which are 47,503 for wages and 162,850 for expenses. They are offsetting that with, I believe it's 135,000. Oh, wow. Yes, $135,000 in offset receipts. Sorry for the dizziness here. So I don't know if you want me to go through the rest of them, since the highway one does reference recreation, or do you want me to keep going or stop rather?
I just had a quick question, just the wages part-time. So
Yep.
this right there shows the increase being 78.32. I know there's other wages part-time and there's, so the summer wages were targeted being how much?
3,900 per and change.
3,900.
So that would be an increase to have the two.
So, okay, it's about $3,900.
Yep, and the reason there's an overall decrease is because one of the ways that we funded, if you remember, the building maintenance operator was to take the admin money and move it into the full-time wages so that we could have a full-time building maintenance person at 40 hours a week as opposed to lesser hours. So that's why the part-time wages are going down, because that 10-hour a week admin's been taken out because Fred is so good at doing payroll and bills.
Yeah, and the decreases were confusing me as you were talking about a second, but now so I appreciate that. I didn't even get to the place of asking about it. So-
I just realized as you asked the question, I went, yeah, it looks like it's going down by 44% initially, so that's a little confusing. But that's because the 11,000 that was budgeted for the admin has been moved out into full-time wages for the building operator.
Okay, so any other questions on those? And we can just probably do a motion for that.
I'm okay with it.
Okay, so we want, Julie is the best to break it up into two sections.
I think I can do them in one line, so it would be line item 68 through 70 and
75 and 76.
75 and 76.
Okay, so the motion is to approve line items 68 through 70 and 75 and 76 as recommended by the town administrator.
And the select board on those.
The select board has covered all.
Yep.
And
Yep,
recommended
sorry,
by
and
the
I can't
select
see the
board.
top, but they are recommended, both of those budgets by the select board.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion? All right, roll call, Scott, aye.
Mary, I.
Cliff, eye.
Julie, I.
All right,
Okay.
passes 4-0.
All right, and the last one on this page would be lines 83, 84, and 85, which are the COA, social services, full-time wages, part-time wages, and expenses. The recommendation from the town administrator and the vote from the select board does include $25,000 for half year of a full-time person. Make sure I say that right. And an additional $7,500 to expenses to make the Powder House News a townwide newspaper that goes out monthly. So I did recommend funding both of those positions. The select board, that wasn't last night, the night before, did vote 2-1 to fund those positions. Fund those supplemental funding amounts.
Any other questions?
I'm good.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm good.
No. So what's the split between police, public safety and seniors on the COA? The time, what percentage of time? When Victoria was in here, I asked that question. And I was quite surprised that the answer was about 15% towards public safety, because I think that's really the bigger need for the town. You know, I'm
Yeah.
a little concerned that we're overloading what seniors might need in this town.
Oh,
You know, we're only 3,000 some. And I qualify as the senior, you know, I'm using zero of the, right, but
fair.
I'm not, there are more at home like me, right? So I'm not unusual in that regard. So I think I'm a little bit concerned about putting this much behind that function. I don't know that the need is there when I look at some other needs around town, but you know, if we can do it, I guess we can do it, but the other concern I have is I think that the bigger need could possibly be on the public safety side. And so, and that goes a little bit to the Powder House News thing, you know, I'm like, if you look at the populations to be served, I think we're not focused in the right direction. So I'm wondering if we have the cart in front of the horse with, putting this plan down. And I think it ought to be discussed a little further and looked at a little further. So I do, I've got a concern about this piece.
Sure. And I know
Couple concerns.
Victoria came and I certainly hear and understand your concerns. I think the idea was to be more proactive than reactive and be able to actually reach out to more seniors, where right now she doesn't have the time by herself with everything else that she works on the COA and social services side to do that outreach, piece of it. So that's why I think the numbers aren't as high of how many people that we're able to
No,
serve.
I'm not talking about people actually served. I'm talking about our population, the need. The Council on Aging calls me, because I'm on the list, because I qualify as a senior, right? So I get the outreach. I mean, it's happening, and we have two other organizations, Neshoba Neighbors and 19 Carter, which also does, the informal kind of outreach. So that's what kind of makes me question this, because once you create this full-time position, then you fill it, right? You create the space.
You fill the time.
You fill the time, yeah, and I'm really questioning whether this is something we need to do. And again, I should only say things once, but I'll say it. I see the more of the need on the public safety side. And I don't know how that fits into what we're doing tonight with looking at the budget.
Well, I had said this before, and I had listened to Victoria talk, and I'm not hearing a full-time position, and positions also been, we don't have a job description, we don't have a shift of how services will be rearranged, and it wasn't sounding like a jump to another full-time position. So I was at the most seeing a part-time assistant need, because I was hearing a social service worker, an outreach worker, an office assistant. It hasn't been worked out yet. And we weren't really getting numbers and metrics of what's missing, which is also very helpful when you're trying to explain to someone else why you're supporting something.
Sure.
And I would much rather have something brought to us next year with a real plan of, this is where we have needs, this is what we're missing, and this is what we're going to do, rather than randomly saying, here's $25,000 that may or may not cover. Because listening to this and talking about that, we have a lot of volunteer services. And I remember, Victoria, maybe you mentioned it as well. What it may be is that we do actually have a very supportive community. And what you really need to be doing is looking for somebody at actually a higher level. He's going to do the tougher work that your neighbor can't do for you. Because like my own community, I live in the Echo Village. We have a whole aging in place group. We have our own services outside of what the town does. And now the people also do rely on the town. And then when I go to 19 Carter, I see lots of people anytime I walk into 19 Carter as a community place. And so we have, as a community, I just think it's like one thing that's so wonderful about living here. We have a lot of groups, and I would really rather see this done next year, but in the time between now and next year, really having a plan. Because I think in the long term, I think everybody's right. We are seeing more needs coming, but I think if we're approaching it with a long-term plan, rather than just saying, oh, we're going to put some money aside and figure out what the job is. Because that's really hard to sell to somebody. It's like, oh, here's.
Well, yeah, to explain it to a taxpayer that comes up and.
Exactly. I don't feel comfortable approving it because I don't have strong enough information on what was presented.
Okay.
Understandable. And I think, and it really, from listening to it, it sounds like everybody's in the beginning stages of working something out. And even Victoria said with the other things she's doing, she hasn't been able to think about what the job is. And it's like, the budgets went in last fall, and that would have been several months to be able to come up with a plan if it was really urgent.
Gotcha. I do have a job description I can share with you. That's here, and I can send it out as well. This is a draft job description, which I'm happy to email out as well. But I can offer you an option. I understand your point about public safety, and I will say to that point, we started union negotiations yesterday on the police union. And we are low in terms of what we fund, particularly with regard to educational incentives, which is what is formerly known as the Quinn Bill. Most communities around us, if not all, are fully funding the Quinn Bill. And so that is huge because
I
that
remember
is.
Chief mentioning this to me,
Yes, this is our
Yes.
major issue. So Quinn Bill is, if I'm not mistaken, it's a 10, 15, 25%. I might have those percentages a little bit off, but you get 10, 15, 25%-ish on top of your salary for having an associate's, bachelor's, master's degree. Goes up incrementally depending on the level of education. And it used to be partially funded by the state. I believe it was a Clinton era program that
Well,
was
it was
started.
50-50. It was.
Yep.
Basically during the Great Recession around 2008 is when when they started making cuts. I mean, and there's a lot of reasons why they took the cuts on it, because I mean, it was pretty, the whole thing was run pretty, there was a lot of corruption in it. That's what really did it. I mean, there was a lot of fly night by night programs that came through. It was like, for what education purposes, police weren't even showing up. They would just pay their fee, not even show up for the classes, get their certificate, and now they got a pay raise. And all it was whatever I could, pay to get, not by pay raise, which would continue on forever. There was tremendous amounts of corruption in it. And that's part of the reason why in the end, the state also just backed away, because it was an easy thing to back away from, because it didn't have a lot of public support. That's for certain. I mean, it was probably right up there with the police details. Actually probably much worse, because there was, like say, a lot of corruption in it. And unlike, like the state police scandal that's gone, where some people are being held accountable, there was not really much that was ever held accountable to them. So there is a lot of negative on that from back then.
Sure.
I remember when they came in, I mean, I know our police chief came in waving his paper from the lawyers saying, oh, because when the state said they weren't gonna, you guys have to fund in that stuff. Of course, City of Worcester said no, and then went to the state Supreme Court and they said, no, you don't have to pay the state's share.
Right.
Scott, were you on FinCom when that was going on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
you
and
know,
I think maybe
I want to echo what Scott said, because it was a very controversial program to begin with. And when it was discovered that it was being abused and misused across the state, that it became a political hot potato. And so it was very easy for, politicians to say, well, it's a bad idea. I think, the sense was that the police union or unions had abused it so badly that no one felt compelled to support it anymore.
And I get that perhaps that it was implemented poorly, but the concept of educational incentives, whatever you want to call it, it's just always stuck in my head as Quinn Bill, is being funded at what are quote unquote former Quinn Bill levels, now at the local level. So the problem we're facing is we are bleeding officers, we are losing people, and we're trying to figure out, what do we have to do? And it's often for, these types of incentives or a few extra dollars an hour to local area departments that are nearby, and they are fully funding educational incentives. So it's one thing we do have to look at as part of the contract renewal.
And so in the contract, there would be language that would require documentation from the officers of what they've done, what they've achieved, what they've accomplished, or is it just,
Showing a piece of paper.
show me a piece of paper?
That's the big, question.
There
'Cause
is,
that was
there
what-
is a difference, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there was not good accountability. It should have been taken away even sooner. I mean, because of the political pressure from police unions, it's hard to get the state to ever back away. It took the Great Recession where basically they had no money. And then finally they stood up and had the guts to actually say, we're not funding this piece. They should have just removed it from the books completely, but it was, like I said, lots of, like I said, very, very negative.
Well, I can
opinion.
feel it. I didn't mean to set off like the red button.
Well, you
I
know,
hit
and
the
it's-
red button,
And the
but
comment is not directed at you,
No.
it's directed at the concept of, I don't think, I mean, I'm not opposed to there being incentives for people to be better educated in taking courses that make you more effective at your job. However, there has to be some control on
Yep.
what that is and how you go about proving it and measuring it.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's all I'm
Put in
saying.
the contract.
And that is in the
And
contract
and it can
already,
be put into
so-
the contract.
Yeah.
there are already, let me try to explain it a different way, because
Yeah.
there are already educational incentives in the existing union contract, and it is prescribed as to how the requirements to meet those educational incentives. The issue is they're low compared to what our neighbors provide.
I
in
mean, the
terms of
payment
The
is.
payment.
The
is-
payment is not the
Correct.
not the
Not the
requirement.
qualifications. It's that the payment is low. So when you look at your overall salary, because our educational incentives are so low, it's making a big difference when you come out on the other end. And now you're looking at officers that are going on and getting degrees. It's far more common than it used to be. And that is considered a significant portion of your pay. So whether you want to put it on the salary schedule, you want to put it into the educational
Mhm.
incentives, but it is something when officers are deciding communities to go to, that they look at, is the educational incentive
Mhm.
funded at the level, the percentage that was formerly known as the Clinton.
So Kristen, if I'm,
Let's just call it X, like Twitter formerly.
Yeah,
called
so
that.
those are like two, go ahead, I'm sorry.
so there's two funding questions. One is paying for the education, the second is paying for the officer who's been educated.
Yes,
And we have an issue with both of those as you start talking in the contract, yeah. And
Yep.
to get back to the original topic, which I took us
I'm
down.
sorry. I was trying to think on my feet.
Hang on, I'm gonna try to tie
right,
it
merge it
together,
together.
which is that I'm assuming that maybe the officers could get some mental health, social services training as part of this whole dynamic.
They could and some
Right,
do.
and some are, I think, better equipped than others to do that kind of activity. And it goes, I just want to bring it back to the original conversation we had about, having a social worker or having a position and I don't know whether you're maybe suggesting, Kristen, that the police could step up their game on the training perhaps and pick up some of this themselves, not having to look to some other town employee to assist.
Well,
I don't know if that's what
I
you're
was
saying.
headed before, sorry, I set off all the alarm.
It was useful though, wasn't it?
It was actually, no, and I didn't know the backstory fully, so that was actually helpful.
Yeah.
I was like, "Jeez, no. I love it." Where I was headed with
You're
this
so young, that's the
was,
problem.
yeah, not as young as I look. Where I was headed towards was the idea of setting aside, we could, as an option, set aside that funding as part of union negotiations, is what I was saying, because when we look at the vast difference in our overall pay for police officers,
Mhm.
starting police officers here are closer to 71,000 all in with everything.
Mhm.
Millbury, I know we're not Millbury, they're actually a little bit larger than us, but not actually that much larger. They're posting over $100,000 now for starting officers. And I'm not saying we should be there,
Mhm.
but what's happening is, in order to attract and retain qualified officers and not have to continue to put people through the academy, which you become a training ground sometimes. And also, that's a year out from when you can start being able to put somebody on patrols. You have to up your pay in order to attract and retain.
Fair
So
enough.
that was my only point, was that perhaps that could be part of the set aside for when we have those conversations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Because you said putting it into
So-
public safety, so
Can we
that was an
consider-
idea. I
Yeah,
had.
can we consider, all you can eat apples and kettle corn?
Absolutely.
I mean, I think,
Whatever makes
we
you
could-
happy.
We could, sorry,
the only point I really want to.
I had to
make
make June laugh.
Was about the accountability piece.
Sure.
If you're going to be expecting, payment for whatever payment system is developed, there has to be an accountability issue, and
Yep.
it has to be real, and it has to be measurable, and it has to be enforced.
Right.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's a standard problem in union contracts, no matter what labor group you belong to. Because I have to say, I belong to a teachers union that had the same problem. So, I mean, but it has to be enforced and there has to be clear guidelines.
But you know what, eventually it catches up with the individuals, so in the long run, it's in the officer's best interest to make them do this right,
Yes,
right?
that's right.
To actually get the training that's meaningful.
Yeah, so that they can go to another town.
Well, no,
No.
but to get support of the public behind what they're doing. and-
Exactly.
And it's the whole thing we've done with the personnel committee is we need to be comparable and the OPEB thing,
Right.
it's the same story and it's very costly to train people and lose them.
It is.
It's
Really,
terrible.
Really.
They've
It's-
estimated that,
Yeah, very costly.
it costs, the cost of losing someone, having to retrain somebody and going through all of that field training and the time is over $100,000
Oh,
Yeah.
easy.
for an officer.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I guess my idea was just to offer you an on the fly option, but I will also say, when you come back to the outreach worker side, in the conversations that I've had with Victoria, one of the reasons I believe the numbers aren't as high as they could be is because we're not doing outreach. I think being able to do the outreach component of it and bring folks in so they're aware of the services and being able to be proactive as opposed to reactive would be beneficial. So it would also be beneficial. We did a major reset on fire salaries. We're doing a major reset on fire salaries as we did with the last union. I am suggesting that we need to do some type of reset on the police side on salaries
Yeah,
as well.
makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once again, too, to go back to the social piece, the social work piece, that it's also an accountability issue. Like people have been talking about, where's the data? Where's the plan? So that is an issue of accountability. Like there has to be something we can look at that's objective, or anyone has to look at, whether it's the select board or the finance committee or personnel committee or whatever. There has to be something that you can look at and say, oh, so this is what you're supposed to be doing. And
Mhm.
did you do this? And how well did you do this? And is this realistic to think you should be doing this?
And
You know,
and Cliff, the thing I'm seeing, because I did read that report that they had mentioned, is they are talking about how the demographics are gonna change here in the coming years.
Yeah.
And having the numbers now, I think will put us in a better position, because if we are gonna need more people, if we can show now that we've been doing this work of tracking, of keeping the metrics, and this is how things are changing, this is what's falling into
Yes.
loop. When we have to add another person, because I really do think in the long term, it's not just gonna be adding one more full-time person. You're gonna be looking at yet another service component that you're gonna need to take care of the community. And having that, thinking long-term on that, I think would be better than, because right now, honestly, this felt kind of piecemeal to me. And I mean, it was like, a problem was identified, but the next step of how you're gonna do this, because as everybody, once you do this, it's in the budget. And even though it says 25 something, it's really 50 plus, because it's a full-time position.
Yeah, I want to also clarify a little bit too on the, Kristen, when you mentioned the outreach is that yes, but there's I think a more fundamental kind of a platform question, which is, are we duplicating services that exist elsewhere? And I think, Julie mentioning the community, the
This
mosaic, yeah. I think Northbrook Village also has services, has a community in that regard. And so I think for me, at a very baseline, is a question about duplication. The place where I don't see the services existing elsewhere in town is in the public safety area. And that's why I asked about it when Victoria was with us, and that's why I go back to it. And I agree with Julie that I think we need to sharpen our pencils and sharpen our focus there and really understand this, that and we've had a very effective council on aging, volunteers, and I know our general direction is moving away from volunteers so that we do things in a more professional way and we're not.
well, it's not just a more professional way. There are needs that can't be met by
Right, the
volunteers.
exactly,
Well,
exactly.
that's where
There's skill sets that
Yeah.
persons don't
Well,
necessarily
also
have.
there's the licensing and
The
the
education.
legal.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah.
I do understand. So I'm not,
Yeah,
at a high level, I'm not opposed, but I think the devil's in the detail here and I'm a little bit.
I think I'm hearing clearly that people want data, information, a
Mhm.
plan.
I'm not saying like.
I don't
no,
think
there
people
should
are
not-
saying we don't think it's a job that should be done. We just.
Exactly.
We want to have a plan.
And what was your, regarding the public safety piece specific to the senior population or just general?
No,
public?
absolutely not. No, not senior. I mean, I wouldn't exclude seniors, but I think,
Although we are a tough group.
we are a tough group, yeah.
Mhm.
Some of us drink a lot, and other kinds of things. But no, I'm thinking about, I went to a league presentation, probably a decade ago in Worcester, and Joe Early, who is a district attorney, was speaking to us, and he said, I could close down my office for lack of business if we dealt with addiction. Okay. Right, I wouldn't have any work. This is the Worcester County, or is it the city of Worcester? I don't know which one he is, district attorney, but there's, and I've heard the same comment from judges and so on. So I think, and I've talked to chief about this stuff, that you get a call and you got to calm somebody down before you can figure out whether they're a dangerous person or simply mentally ill and having a break of some kind, right?
Mhm.
So I do think that even for a small town like Berlin, that's a really important need. And that's one that I'd like to see addressed, but I don't know if Victoria is interested in that. I don't know if that's part of what she likes to
Yeah,
do. or
there's
what.
very specialized training for that, and typically, you need to, it's typically people who come from police backgrounds that do that. It's I forget what the name, I keep thinking CJIS, and that's not the name of the training, or maybe it
Mhm.
is. But, somebody who works during the day, it's different to, have a 2 a.m. call and go to a, scene of a crime. Like, that's a very different type of response.
Right, but even just the petty stuff like neighbor disputes or some other kinds of things, a lot
Oh,
of times.
she gets into that.
Yeah,
I hear about them.
See, I
Right,
think-
so,
I think some of what, maybe I'm out of line on this,
No,
but,
please go.
I know that we have been trying to do it, so we're not actually hiring a full-time person to do one job, like with some of the admin work and things like that, and I think she started because her services were available to help with the police situations.
right, it's not what
that
she
we
came in to
have.
do, but there was a need.
But we also don't
Yeah.
have, I don't think, a single police officer that has the training or enough police officers with the training at certain hours or times or whatever. And I think that's when they're calling her in and using her.
Mhm.
So it's almost one of those where, if she does have some time to dedicate to the police situations to help them or, the citizens of Berlin. So I think it's one of those where if you think that the police part of it is more, then you're talking probably it's gonna become a new job
Mm.
for the police officers. So it may, in the long run, and it may need to go there. But I think right now, I think she's trying to work a lot of that in and some days it's just an overload where there
Well-
just isn't enough hours in the day to,
Sure.
or mental
Mhm.
hours in the day. to be
Yeah,
able-
it's
not
not
just-
easy work. no,
Right,
yeah.
it's not just hours, as I
But-
find a lot, it's
Mhm.
the,
I'm hearing more of what Julie brought up, which is
Mm-hmm.
define our needs, define Victoria's skills, and her interests, and figure this out. I don't think we're quite there yet, on it.
Yeah, I don't want it to go away.
Me too.
I just,
too.
as I said, right now, I would not feel comfortable trying to explain to somebody why I approved this now because I don't have enough information.
You're kind of the same opinion.
Yeah, that's why I spoke about it. It's like, I
Mhm.
just don't feel like simply saying yes here because I was uncomfortable when I was listening to her description of what she
Well,
wanted
that's
to
why
do.
I also went, and when she was talking, she went and did a presentation at the select board,
I
and I
was
went
just
to
gonna
hear
bring
it
that
as
up.
well, to hear what else she had
Yeah.
to say. So it's very obvious that a lot is covered under the umbrella, and she does have two roles because she was originally hired just as the COA director, and then when the ARPA funding came in, the social work component was added, so she could have a full-time position.
Yeah.
Because she already had social work background.
Yep.
So she was in a good position to take that. Um, so it sounds like you are at that point of now deciding like, what's the next step?
Yeah, and my concern is always employee burnout too. When
Mhm.
we are talking about the nature of the work that's being done, it's more than just the hours that are being
Mhm.
put in the day. It's, because I can tell you when I deal with personnel things, 1 hour feels like 7. It's exhausting.
Hey, it's very draining.
It really
Yeah, it's very
is.
draining. I know
So,
that.
you know, that's why I tried to have her come and do the select board presentation and try to get more of that data out there. And she did provide numbers,
Mhm.
you know, of people she was helping through different aspects of the job.
And I would just add that, you know, this, while social work is quantifiable in one sense,
Mm.
it is not quantifiable in another sense.
Sure.
And social workers that I know, there's a toll
Mhm.
that is not measurable. So I think we're asking the right questions and
But you bring up another good point. Because one of the things that we really do need is what is a reasonable load for, you know, number of families that somebody is covering, number of cases, because that has to have been quantified already for people who work professionally in that field.
Oh, Julie, you might not want to look at that. I think that, you know, the market comparables, these jobs are notoriously, people are notoriously overloaded in these jobs.
No, but,
Like nursing.
but
Yeah, you know.
No, but I would like to know what somebody who is in the field basically says, for me to be competent, what is a reasonable caseload? Not what not what, the bean counter says, but what.
yeah,
Hmm.
another professional not working in the school, not working in our town, who could say
Because
in my field,
that's the other
yes.
thing about us being a small town, I think we have more flexibility in a way
Mhm.
of designing this so that
Right.
we're
Understood.
not creating a job that is like, just shove everything into it and you can't handle
Yeah.
this.
Okay, so do we want to have some type of motion for on these 3 items and,
I would like there to be a motion.
okay, and what would you want it to be?
I can't remember, did the school, did the select board already review this and approve that?
Yes, they voted 2-1 in favor of it.
Oh, I'm never gonna remember how you word that.
Well, actually, no, when they did it, they did each line item separately when they voted.
Well, I wonder, I mean, do we want a motion that includes, approving as town administrator requested, and, or do we want in like the select board, or do we want a motion that minus the supplemental full-time?
I would like all of it, and recommendation of the town administrator and the select board.
Okay, well, why don't we just start with that then? So
Are you saying as presented?
As presented.
Oh, okay, I should make sure I understand.
I'm terrible at doing motions, so don't ask me. Scott did such a good job over with all those items. I was like, how does he remember?
Okay, so like the motion.
I made the motion, I can't second it, so.
Right. I'll second it. And do we have further discussion?
No, not from me.
Okay, so roll call, Scott, no.
Mary, no.
Cliff eye.
Julie, no.
All right, so it doesn't pass.
And these are just on the, is this on the two
Well,
supplementals?
this is the
83 through
motion is
85.
specific through A through 85.
Okay, so can we
So-
take it in pieces then?
Yes, I
Can we
think
do
we can review.
83?
Well, I think the other piece is the main piece really coming down to the 25 supplemental on 84. Would that be likely to get a positive?
To be honest, for 84 is the supplemental that I'm having difficulty for the Powderhouse News. I'm sorry, I have tried to follow what they're doing and I really have no opinion on it. Like, I'm not for or against it. And I would like the opportunity to say that.
All right.
So we go line by line, it sounds like.
I wonder
Sorry.
if we could do one one thing that, it sounds like.
You're trying to combine 83,
Yeah, I'm just
85,
wondering if
but-
we do simply a motion, but how about this, maybe, unless I'm reading this wrong, about a motion to approve lines 83, 84, and 85 minus the $25,000 supplemental on line 84. And the rest being, as,
So
what would be
So-
the
so-
perfect
so-
line?
let me interject something, Scott, because the big change here is moving from a position in the operating budget that's part-time, moving it to a full-time position.
Well, there
That's
is-
the big thing that's happening here. So that's line 83. 84, I was just looking back to see my notes
Oh, I'm
on.
sorry, no, Mary, 83, it was a full-time position, but half of it was funded by ARPA.
I said in the operating
Oh,
budget.
okay.
In the operating budget.
Okay.
So, in this position, the higher in was a part-time council on aging. It morphed. The
Mhm.
ARPA money came, COVID happened, things moved all around. So are we gonna institutionalize it in our operating budget? And that's, I think, the key question in 83, and that's what I was speaking about, is I don't think we're ready for that.
Oh, you weren't talking about 84, you were talking about 83.
I'm talking about both of them actually,
Oh.
but principally 83, because that's the big impact one.
Mhm.
And I was just looking to see, actually, the public safety, I'm looking at my notes, was 5 to 10% of her time, not 15. I put them together, I guess.
Oh, I thought we were talking about the 25,000 supplemental.
I thought so too.
I thought so
So
too.
So,
So
Supplemental
we need to go
request,
line by line then.
part-time worker, 25.
Yeah,
or-
I think we
Yeah,
need to go
that's-
line by line.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Scott, but I'm sorry to complicate it, but I think they're very different questions. And the expense line may be, an easy yes, I don't know,
Mhm.
but, the 85.
Okay, so let's just start with the starting one with line 83. Motion to approve line 83 as recommended by the town administrator and approved by the select board.
I'll second that.
Okay, any other discussion on 83? This is the full-time wages of the social services director. Okay, roll call, Scott, aye.
Mary, no.
Cliff, I.
Julie, I.
Okay, passes 3-1. Next is a motion on line 84 to, as recommended by the town administrator and approved by the select board.
I'll second that.
Okay, any other discussion on this one?
Yes.
Okay.
Under discussion, if I may, through the
Yes.
chair. We aren't really supposed to do retro pay anymore for union or ever, I guess I'm finding out now through union contracts. And that's why I brought up this suggestion in reading the room. When it seemed like there might not be the support for the $25,000. So what we would have to do is, depending on how the union negotiations finish up over the next 2 months, we would have to look at like a reserve fund transfer for the first year, because the budget's already going to be set at that time. We can't wait until May of 25 to fund those positions retroactively. So my suggestion would be, rather than having to do a reserve fund transfer to set that funding aside, not with the understanding that it's necessarily for the police union specifically, but you did create that HR expense line item. And so my recommendation would be to put the $25,000 there and park it there. And then if it doesn't get used, it flows back to free cash.
Thank you.
Just,
Yeah.
just a thought.
No, I like that. And I was looking at my notes from when we talked about this back.
And I'll show you that line and I'll share my screen too.
Okay.
This was the, under the town administrator budget that was created. This is the new and you came up actually with the title, Mary, because we were looking for a good title. So
Oh, I
this
did.
was to deal with employment costs of contracts,
Mhm.
hiring, payouts for vacations,
Oh, right. Yes, yes, I remember this conversation.
Physicals too.
physicals, advertising,
Yeah.
positions.
All sorts of.
Sometimes
Okay.
people have to be drug tested.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all there's all
Yeah.
kinds, we have no HR expenses, so the individual departments are
You
trying
had a
to
good
bear it. Or we
presentation on that.
do reserve fund transfers. Oh, I did, thanks. So right now, there is 30,000 in that line item.
So to add the 25 to that,
That would be my recommendation, unless there's somewhere else that you would rather see that funding go.
I'm sorry, I can't find that line.
It's line 11.
Line 11, right
Item.
here.
Oh,
Item
wow,
11.
I was looking way down below. That's my fault. Sorry.
And let me share my
HR expenses new. I like that, Kristen, because we may find ourselves. This goes into defining this whole area of
Yeah.
activity and whether an expanded news vehicle is gonna fit into.
So HR expenses,
Yeah.
got it.
It's really weird when it's in PDF, it doesn't highlight properly for some reason, but yes, that line.
Mhm.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I didn't. You wanna make note, you gotta give me one, I'm sorry.
So
I'm
what's
putting
the
June first,
motion?
you gotta give me an account.
So what's the motion, Scott?
Okay, so
Wait, so did you make a motion to approve line item 84?
we were about to, but I think we'll.
I interrupted
You interrupted,
Yeah,
okay.
poor Scott can't get anything done. I keep
I
interrupting.
started typing.
Well, yes, the
Sorry,
motion,
Julie.
we had a second, and now, Kristen, recommended making a
interrupted.
change. So I think,
So are we canceling them? So we're not doing the motion to approve line item 84?
You can withdraw the motion
yeah, I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay, motion withdraw.
and I withdraw the second.
Before that money just went like, what, I wanted to give you an option.
Okay, so do we want to go back? So 11, the town administrator's recommendation is, funding at 55,000 instead of 30,000.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, you're waiting for me. I'm sorry. I was waiting for you.
No, I'm sorry. So the town administrator's recommendation is to fund that 55,000.
I would recommend to put it there, and that the idea of that line item is if it's not used, it flows to free cash. It has very specific uses, and when we discussed it, I need to bring those expenses to let the FinCom know and the select board know when I'm using those expenses and what they're being spent on. So that was part of a report that I was required to provide. The select board wanted that report as well. But as I intend to use that funding, so that if there's any concerns, it's very transparent and out there what that
Mhm.
funding is being used for.
Okay. All right, so
So
that's your
yeah, that's my
recommendation.
recommendation. Sorry,
That's
I
what I just wanted to be able to put that in. I wanted
I'm like taking notes waiting.
I was gonna say take.
to. I figured she has something to finish up there. Didn't want to interrupt.
I'm like, why are they voting?
All right, so, motion is to approve line item 11 for $55,000 as recommended by the town administrator.
I'll second that.
Okay, any other discussion?
No.
All right, roll call, Scott, aye.
Mary, I.
Julie, I.
Cliff, aye.
All right, approved 4-0.
Well, we got through that.
All right, so now you go back to 84. Oh, let me get back to. Jumping all around on me here. Okay. There we go. Now we're back to 84 and 85.
Okay, so now. Okay, so the town administrator's recommendation at the moment would be without the supplemental. Right, so what would the dollar amount without the supplemental, like 25,769?
25,769.
Okay, so motion is approved line 84 of $25,769 as recommended by the town administrator.
I'm sorry, what was that amount again? 25,
769.
769.
Yep.
I'll second it.
So that's an increase of just the 2%, 2.1% over FY 24.
So I'm completely lost. What are we talking about?
Line
This is
84.
984.
I thought we just moved that to,
Yes, we
Yeah.
did. Well, we
Yes.
didn't move all of it. We moved to 25,000 supplemental. There was still the, oh, I'm sorry. I messed up that number. It's not,
No, it
it's
is.
$521 is,
It's
No,
it's
that's-
25,769.
that was the
okay.
That's
That's
the
the
increase. The
Yeah,
521
okay,
is the
yes,
yeah.
increase over
Okay.
FY 24.
Yeah.
You're correct.
You were correct.
All right.
So it's approving the line item without the supplemental,
yeah, all right, so it's 25,769.
right? The wages part-timer for the van
So it's
drivers.
just the supplemental that was removed.
That's what I needed to
Oh,
understand.
on your
So
wavelength. I gotcha.
It's just the
The
van
van
driver.
drivers.
That
This was,
simplifies things.
with the 25, that would have added in the partial year full-time outreach worker, but without it, it's just the van drivers. Let's see.
Okay.
Right, any other discussion? Okay, roll. Very dumb.
No, go ahead.
Roll call, Scott, I.
Mary, I.
Cliff eye.
Julie, I.
All right, approved 4-0.
Can I talk about 85 for a second?
Yeah.
Because if you don't fund the supplemental, it may be the death of the Powderhouse News. And I'm not saying that as a threat. It's just the cost of printing and publishing is so expensive that the idea was sort of this creative idea of turning it into a town newspaper, adding some additional funding. And we also did talk about trying to do it electronically or possibly sending out like postcards with the Powderhouse News where we said, hey, we're going online. If you still want to receive one, you know, in print, let us know. Or maybe charging a nominal fee, which we don't have a revolving fund. So June's going to say no, which is fine. So I just, without the additional funding for the Powderhouse News, they don't have sufficient funding in their expense
Mhm.
line item to continue to move forward with the Powderhouse in its current form, which is to print and mail every 2 months. So our bulk mail permit's gone up, postage has gone up, printing's.
I thought they were, when I was looking, I thought they were moving to monthly with the 75.
This would be able to help us move to monthly. We would also be able to seek more sponsorship if it's a broader newspaper, which would hopefully be able to help offset as well. So that was part of the thinking there.
Mhm.
And trying to move to electronic. So just some thoughts there.
So the supplemental is really intended to expand to a larger audience in the current.
Intended to
News.
expand and help offset the
So-
cost. Yep.
So the requested 17,341 in that line.
That's a level funded expense.
Level funded, and that'd be mailing what we see going out right now. Now,
Yep.
let me ask the question, if we were to do a little campaign where email addresses are available and
I think that's been done, and I think there's been 15 people that have said they'll take it by email, which is better than none. But maybe you could do a bigger campaign.
was
They
it
put it
in
in the news, I thought, was what I was told, in the newsletter itself. If you want this electronically, like we could email it out to you. Do you not remember seeing
I
that?
think the
No, I
difficult
don't.
part there is
Okay.
No, I don't.
knowing
I could
that
be
they,
wrong.
they want to go paperless,
haven't.
basically, right? That's the whole issue. is
Well-
knowing that you can take that home off of it, so you're getting the savings.
Right, except that there are a percentage of the population, perhaps largely seniors, that would like to still receive it in print copy.
Right.
Mhm.
So you're helping to offset the cost, you're broadening it to a wider audience. But you're also, you know, adding some funding because they're struggling right now on their existing funding to put it out every other month in its current form.
And the existing funding is 17,341,
Not, yes, for everything COA, not
Mhm.
just the powder.
not
house.
just the Powderhouse.
Correct.
That line, I think the arithmetic is wrong,
Oh,
because you have $8,000 difference, but it's only going up 7,500,
uh-oh,
right?
hold on. I'll switch to this one so I can look at it on the,
Sorry.
no, that's fine, thank you.
No, it's good to catch
Um,
these things.
Yeah,
There's just like crazy moving parts on these things, let me see. Expenditures. Is it not totaling correctly? Oh, yeah, because we had to add a bit for the,
Postage maybe?
Nope, I added 500 because there was an increase in dues.
So
And
that would be here, right? So we would, wait a minute, where am I?
so
Right
she-
here, so the request should be up 500 then, right?
The dollar.
well,
change-
she didn't request it when I went through her budget, though. She didn't have, yeah, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because you've got to put a 500 somewhere, otherwise it's not gonna,
Show
Total.
dollar change.
yeah, because I put it in here, but it's not showing the, I see what you're saying.
because it's showing an $8,000 increase, but only the supplemental is the.
Don't do that to me. I didn't put an equal sign in there. All right, then I-
Was the supplemental supposed to be 8? Is that what you're saying, June?
No, so.
No, it should only be the 70.
So the dollar change column should be 7,500 rather than 8, is that what
Well,
you're saying?
Yeah, well, if you didn't do the 5.
Well, it should have been 500 without the supplemental. It was showing 0
Mhm.
without the
Okay.
supplemental.
700, no,
If you
no,
add
the
an
five.
extra 500.
That's
What
fine.
line item
It's-
are we on?
Here,
43.
Yeah.
She had, actually, this should
you
have
had
been
added-
17,
no.
841.
Ah, there's the
Because
error.
she had-
Okay,
she
okay,
actually
okay.
Added
Number
$500
341, or you
regardless
want
of
this?
Yeah.
for
Okay, now it's right.
fees
Okay,
and
got it.
dues and-
Yeah,
and
and the
such.
change,
So I did have
As a
the.
result, it wasn't showing
The
here.
total
The total
number
was right,
the
but the
total's
numbers-
right, but the
Yeah.
thing is, I added
understood
$500 after she submitted her request. Because
No.
after the budgets were due,
Mm-hmm.
the MCOA dues went up by $300 and the Meals on Wheels, given
Mhm.
our population adjustment, went up as well.
Mhm.
So that's why I added that additional 500 because that came in
Mhm.
after the deadline. And so I added it to my recommendation, but now I've put it
Where it
in her
belongs.
request. Well, it could go either place, but
Better to talk about it here than on town meeting floor where we take up 30 minutes on that.
yeah.
fair enough. So.
That's the kind of thing that discourages people from coming out to vote.
So yes, so you're right. So if you were to do it without the 7,500 supplemental, the amount would be 17,841.
Yeah, okay.
If you're to do it with it, it's 25,341.
And the purpose of the supplement then is to expand the Powder House News.
Continue and expand.
Continue and expand.
So continue the coverage, expand the coverage and expand from every other month to every month.
Yep, and make it a town-wide newspaper. I mean, the thinking behind that is one of the things that we hear the most and the select board hear the most is we don't communicate, people don't know what's going on. Obviously, our website is terrible. We're trying to fix that. It's on the list, you know.
Hello, see, this is another sort of a duplication thing, and I've been pounding on the website business. Make it user-friendly, let people post within, you have what do you call it, a gatekeeper on your postings, but that's where we ought to be putting this money.
Yeah.
And.
What do you do with
and
people
you
that want
could-
the hard copy though, because they don't go online?
I think we need to identify that population and take care of them. But I don't think it's the full, I can guarantee you, every senior that I spend time with in town has a computer and knows how to use it. So,
Excuse me.
but I'd like to see the Powder House News posted on the town website. That's where I'd read it. Hello, right?
That can happen. I also think we could send it out by email. So if it were to stay the Powder House News in its current format and not expand, one of the recommendations I would have is to take a small amount of funding with the hopeful idea that it would reimburse itself and do some type of a postcard that says, unless you return this card, you're not going to get a hard copy anymore.
How about a nice big yellow box on the front of the next Powder House News that says, call us if you still want to get it on paper, otherwise it'll be on the town website.
Do that too.
So the option is to
Yep.
call if you want paper, not let me know if you want me to email this to you.
But that still costs money.
To put the, but they're gonna,
Well, it's
they're
cheaper
gonna,
than doing a postcard though. That's a,
yeah,
that's
it's
a
a
better.
separate, postcard's a separate mailing, and you've got your targeted population, the people that are getting the Powder House News, and you make it big front on the center. And they can call or,
More time to put into it if we're gonna expand it at all.
It would, and so that's one of the things I talked to Victoria about how we would do that, and we would look at utilizing some additional senior work off.
yeah,
I mean, one way could be maybe even incentivize people, like trying to push them towards, online is, do you go into it with just do a printed version. For that, you've been doing a printed version only, every 2 months. But you would do a virtual only version, well, it would actually be virtual available every month. But they would be, you could point out to them, otherwise they're losing access to one every other month.
Right, we don't have enough to just do it every 2 months with the rising costs. That's part of the concern.
Yeah, and I'd like to address that. It's fun. It's a fun publication. Again, there's pieces
it's
of it that
gotten
I like.
better.
I'm not.
And it's better than it used to be.
Yes. Exactly right. So I don't know where that leaves me looking at the supplement, the 7,500, it's like, how do we, I don't know what I think about that, but I do think you'd get a reasonable response from the seniors that are getting it now if you said, call if you want paper.
Yeah.
Otherwise, otherwise find it on the town website.
The other thing we talked about is you could do a small run and leave some at the library
Mhm.
and the town
Sure.
offices.
Sure.
So people could pick them up if they were
Mhm.
interested, and that might cut down, that at least cuts down your mailing costs right there and some of your printing costs too.
Yes.
So I would recommend, should you not want to fund the supplemental, those are some of the ways I would recommend to cut back. If you wanted for communication purposes to keep it as we mail it out, now we mail it out to every household, we need that supplemental funding. And I see the benefits and disadvantages of both on this one. So I'm gonna be with Julie.
See, I'm going back because part of me would like to see, all these ideas are really great ideas.
Yeah.
None of this is like, they're bad ideas. And me personally, I would actually like to say, give them the money with the opportunity, like in the next year, to try these different ideas and see where are they getting the most traction, where can they save money,
Mm.
and then be in a position to reevaluate. Again, it's another way of collecting
Well,
data,
right.
because right now they're trying, I mean, I also listened to like when they were talking about this, and it's like, you're trying to figure out how to get more eyeballs.
Right, without doing it, it's hard, without knowing trial and
you-
error to some
And if you
extent.
talk to anybody, I don't do marketing, but when you talk to people who do things like marketing, you have to try different things and say, okay, what I tried this, it worked, it didn't work, why didn't it work? And so in that respect, I'm almost kind of like pushing towards saying yes for this year, the extra funding for them to be able to figure out, because it seemed to be one of the pain points is how, because everybody, we all have these problems. I do different things. I have to get on different platforms to talk to different people. I do not have like one platform I can get on to talk to everybody I know. Some people do email. I know somebody who thinks email died 10 years ago and will not touch it. And
Yeah.
no,
I don't respond to email anymore, it died.
There we go. It's
and
interesting thought.
or I have to get on Slack to talk to some people. I was doing a class and I had to switch between something called Circle and Slack and Discord. So, I mean, I'm younger than most of these people. And so just knowing, everybody's like, oh, just go on Facebook, just go on Neighbors. You're never going to get everybody. And I think I kind of want to say yes to it now so that the group is putting a lot of work into getting a newsletter together and trying to figure out how to communicate would have basically a year to try things.
I don't disagree with you. I think it's a pretty small amount of money. But I'd like to see the focus of that money be more the experimental thing than to say, oh, we're gonna expand this news publication, right? I think that and I like the town outlets for paper copies, and I like the town website because that is it should be our official face to the town.
Yeah.
It should be the place where we speak to the citizens, right? That's the point of these kinds of things, and that's why it's been so distressing for me that it's not very functional. And you get somebody that's as smart as Julie and is accomplished, and she can't figure out how to post minutes because it's just too complicated. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Fair.
I mean, it's not,
Julie, you had the most cogent thought of the evening. You put it all together.
Yeah, I did.
Huzzah.
Yeah, no, she's fabulous.
Yeah.
Absolutely fabulous.
You kind of
I-
pieced all my thoughts together. That was very good.
Yeah.
Well, this is, because I
Yeah.
came in having no idea what was going.
It's excellent. Sometimes that's your clean slate.
Okay,
And you-
so
Let's
you
get
were
a vote.
just
Seems
gonna-
like
you're just
we're-
gonna move right through this.
these are at this point, we're ready for a motion. So I'm gonna do a motion for approve line item 85 as recommended by the town administrator, approved by the select board.
Second.
Any other discussion?
No,
Right,
Sure.
roll call, Scott, I.
Mary, I.
Bye.
Julie, I.
Right, approved 4-0.
The next one's not gonna go any faster, and we haven't even talked about the warrant. Recreation.
Huzzah.
I think you've heard Julie's presentation. My recommendation, and now the select board held off on a vote. There were a couple questions that one member wanted to ask directly of the rec chair, but I did go through this in depth at the select board meeting Monday night. My recommendation is to fund the supplemental $2,000 for the software, which they're going to match 30%, just about at $800. And to fund the rec director for 10 hours a week at $10,400. The camp counselors and the seasonal help, I believe, should come out of revolving, as I mentioned before. And while it is a large request on the regular budget increase, which is an increase of $11,000 on recreation expenses, that is necessary to complement the CPA project, which is the $300,000 to update the fields. I would not feel comfortable moving forward with, I mean, if that were not to pass at town meeting, then this would just flow back to free cash. There is that understanding there. So
We need that
Yeah.
to give the other part-time person something to do over the summer. to
there you
mow the lawn.
go. Hey, I'm gonna get on punchy after 9. That's not me this week.
No,
So,
this is,
Aren't you glad you got through so many last week?
yeah, well, we did the easy ones,
Yeah.
mostly.
yeah,
Yeah.
so, and it's tricky, and I get it, because it's a huge increase overall. You're talking about a 74% increase in expenses, 75, plus a 10,400 for a part-time rec director. The benefit that I see to the part-time rec director is that you have a revolving fund. If you have somebody with some seed money, you can start to put programming in place, you can generate funding. That position can start to self-fund. I'm not going to say that it would be fully funded out of the budget because I don't know. And again, until you do it, you don't know how much money you're going to bring in, how much interest there is going to be in the activities that are planned. But I do think the rec software, definitely where you register online as they move into these summer camps that they're doing, and they have $1,500 in ARPA funding to do it this summer. I think that's a really invaluable tool.
I like all this. Julie Lee has really
Mhm.
come along over the last couple of years in understanding how to do this. I think to this Julie's point on CPA projects, you need to understand the operating budget impact. And so this
Yeah.
does that in,
Right.
in part, but the soccer fields I know are a little different than CPA, but this will help. This will help the overall recreation at South Common. So,
Mhm.
And-
but really she did a nice job of bringing it along and figuring
Well,
out
they
what our
started-
process is and then stepping into it.
Well, it was one of those things where they had all these ideas and they were really trying to figure it out. And they sat down and
Yeah.
worked on it over a long period of time.
They've done a very good job.
And I think they did a lot of good research.
Mhm.
And they are doing, I'm also kind of excited by the idea that they're doing something where they're going to be using our resources, town resources.
Mm.
And being able to figure out how to generate money to keep supporting those resources.
Yeah, the
And-
dialogue has been good.
And on top of
Yeah.
it, they're looking for what sounds like a lot of fun things for people to do.
Exactly.
And like, it's a shame Shane isn't here, but he made a good point that other people are making, that you have to go out of town now
Yeah.
for your kids to do things.
Yeah.
And it'd be nice to have more activities in town, so.
Yeah.
Well, they could also use the Powerhouse News to advertise it.
They, absolutely, there you go.
We're gonna make a motion to con-
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the motion.
Excellent, we're in violent agreement here for a change.
I have a motion
Yes.
for
To
items
house,
92 and 93 as recommended by the town administrator. Did the select board though had not?
They haven't voted.
They haven't voted.
Okay, so just as recommended by the town administrator.
Second,
Any other discussion?
Nope,
No,
All right, roll call. Scott, I
Harry, I.
Cliff Eye.
Julie, I.
Okay.
approved 4-0.
So the last couple of that one didn't get highlighted. The last couple of items you have, which does include line 114, sorry, it didn't get highlighted, but you have lines 104 through 110 minus 108 plus 114. So this would be the assessments on both the operating and capital side for Berlin Memorial, the assessments for operating and capital for Tohoto, and the $22,000 proposed for the intermunicipal animal control officer. And then the chapter 32B health insurance, which includes the $45,000 complimentary increase for the OPEB premiums. The select board has voted on, as you can see, voted on everything but line, the health insurance line item, because I was leaving that, as I mentioned earlier, to see if we could do 2 or 3. So
Sorry, which line is the health insurance?
114.
114, thank you.
Yep.
Can we do that one separate then, just to,
Sure.
since they didn't.
Yep, they have, and also interestingly enough, and we talked about capital, and I know capital hasn't made a decision yet. I, for simplicity's sake, made a recommendation that I think we talked about this, maybe we haven't, that we match the amount that we are being requested to put in at Tohoto.
Mhm.
So that way we match Boylston, and that amount is only $22,000 over what was requested last year, and it is within the money that capital does have to spend. And then, should we wish to give the rest to Berlin Memorial, that request is $1,362,132 in capital. Obviously, we're nowhere near that. If we give the $233,675 to Tohoto, that would leave us with $231,787. That means that you don't have to tap into anything above the 30% threshold as recommended in the free cash plan. You don't have to touch the money going into capital stabilization. And again, the sense that sentiment, or what's the word? The way the select board was thinking was they can always take a revote if capital decides to do something differently. But they wanted to move forward with the school recommendations. So they voted
Okay.
all of them.
Well, why don't we, can we start with was it health insurance?
Want to start with that? Is that easier?
We'll just get that one knocked off.
All right, so that's 114.
All right.
And so that is an increase, it is an increase of 14.7% because the health insurance itself is going up 7.27% for FY25, plus we're adding $45,000 for OPEB, and we're adding extra spots so that we have enough funding should new employees or existing employees come on the plan.
And you said how much for OPEB? You said it was 45,000?
45,000 is the estimate from the actuary that we should set aside for annual premiums for FY25 for OPEB.
So is that rolled into the 842?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. So we didn't treat it as a supplement, but
No, because if town meeting passes the statute, we are required to fund it. So I don't view it as optional.
okay,
And if we
Understood.
don't, then
no, that makes
I
perfect
mean,
sense.
yeah.
Nope,
You know,
that's
some of these are a little on the fence, but
it's a minor detail and that's a good answer.
And if it
Thank you.
doesn't, then it won't be spent.
that it won't be spent because we
Yeah.
can't spend it on
Yeah.
anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good point.
Okay,
Okay. So motion is to approve line item 114 as recommended by the town administrator And I'm
Just me.
assuming just you, as recommended by the town administrator.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? Nope. All right, roll call, Scott, aye.
Mary, I.
Cliff eye.
Julia,
They approved 4-0.
And so just so you can see, I was trying to see if I could, I'm gonna pull this one up.
I'm getting seasick.
I'm
Close your
so
eyes. Close
sorry.
your eyes for the moment. Close the eyes.
Stop sharing.
That's why I'm sitting here looking at my PC.
I'm looking at my
I
PC
know.
too, and it's like,
You didn't want to
I'm-
get seasick
not
tonight
looking at
when you came here? That wasn't on the, so when I do it when I show you from the Excel spreadsheet, it holds the top row, so you can actually see the description, so
oh,
I'm,
well, that's nice. I like
that helps a little, so
No,
I'm gonna
yeah,
pull
it
it up
actually
on
does.
here. Okay, there you go. So now you can see the line items that are left, which is this block here in yellow, all pertaining to
Fine.
school.
Well, I'd recommend
I'm
the
looking
animal
at it here,
control
too.
officer first.
okay, so
Discussion.
109 and 110.
Yeah, 109 and 110. So any further update on?
Nothing yet. They're still waiting to see if we'll have a sixth community that joins us. If we do get a sixth community, it will come in just shy of 18,000. So the max would be 22.
Okay, max is 22.
And the select board did vote to approve that. We've had really good luck with our current animal control officer. She's certified, trained, has a kennel, and there aren't a lot of options out there.
Yeah, we've had a lot of discussion on this.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll make a motion here once I can see the numbers.
Hold on,
I
I'm
lost
trying to show you the votes and the numbers.
Lines 109 and 110 as recommended by the town administrator.
Oh, second.
And approved by the select board.
Okay. I'll second that too.
All right, any other discussion?
Nope.
Okay, roll call, Scott, aye.
Mary, I.
Cliff eye.
Julia,
All right, that is 4-0.
Okay, so that leaves
The school.
the 4 school line items.
So I don't know how, I mean, part of it I've always wondered is because we've had a lot of discussions going on in the background here and obviously some emails exchanged on this. I don't know, should we be reading some of the emails into a record of what's gone on this stuff and no,
We can, or I can try to summarize if that's
if you want to
easier for
summarize,
you.
that would probably be easier.
So, we've talked a lot about the free cash that we put in last year as one-time funding. According to the Mars consultant that the school is using, that is part of the town's FY24 assessment, regardless of the funding source. So our assessment, they're saying, starts at 3,924,434 plus the $382,000. And they are stating that we are legally required under Mass state law to at least level fund, which that is true. The question is that the assessment that was certified by the state? And that answer to that is we don't know. And the reason we don't know is because the state has not yet certified the district's FY24 assessment numbers, which I find a little crazy because we're already in March. So how can they not have certified? But I guess this is normal because last year the district didn't get their numbers certified till April from the state. So it seems late, but
What is the state, the certified, is it literally they literally have a motion that was read at town meeting, or it's just what
It's the
schools are
assessment
telling
amounts.
them?
So there's a whole bunch of forms and documents that they have to submit. I have copies of them.
When you say the school submit?
The schools submit
How
to the
about
state.
The town has submitted nothing?
No, but they have to show backup and documentation. So I have involved legal counsel at this time because I do not believe that we owe the 382,000. If there is a legal technicality on which we do owe it, I want to see it in writing in the state certification, and I've yet to see that, and that is what legal counsel is asking for as well. So until we see that, at this time, I would recommend we move forward without the 382. If for some reason they tell us that the 382 does have to be part of the base budget, we are short $200,000 just to level fund both Tohoto and BMS from last year, because we're only going up by $178,000
Mhm.
total between the two schools. So that would mean we'd have to come up with another 200,000 just to stay at the FY 24 level with no increase at all. That obviously would be problematic. We'd have to go back and start cutting the budget. Something I'm disinclined to do at this time until I actually see the assessment numbers as certified by the state.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big points of well, I've used number 383, it's like 382.
Yeah, you're right.
something like that.
Yeah.
So I just been rounding to 383. 383,000 is, I mean, it was very clearly stated. I mean, got up, spoke at the town meeting. This was an agreement that we literally a year ago that we brokered with the schools, that they had a significant exposure of nearly $700,000 at BMS for out of district special ed tuition. And now we had already gone above our target levy of 2.5% of going to 4% by adding an extra $200,000 from our excess levy capacity to fund the operating budgets of Tohoto and BMS, which put us at 4%. What we were trying to do was avoid a significant, I mean, a really large property tax increase, which the other 383,000 would have been having us approaching nearly 7%. So you've been starting to get close to doubling what the property tax increase was last year by using free cash as a temporary thing. Because we know that these out-of-district special education tuitions are very unpredictable and they come and go. And I mean, looking at what we've gotten submitted from the schools, I mean, they've budgeted over $500,000 less to BMS for out-of-district special ed tuition. And also there's no equivalent increase going to Tohoto where the kids are just moving from BMS to Tohoto. So I mean, from our understanding too, is that they didn't even need the money in that or the present fiscal year. They've not even had to spend it for that purpose. Which if it's not true, they can let us know on that, but that's the understanding we have, especially from the last meeting that the select board member was at, that they couldn't even account for what they actually did spend the $383,000 on.
So let me just interrupt Scott a little bit in the flow, so I'm clear on it. So we brokered a deal with the school committee, the school district, to accommodate this incident that happened late in the year, a cohort of students that required exceptional special education funding. And then you're saying that cohort of students didn't appear to actually show up at the school or need the funding.
Well, I don't know the
We don't
exact
know,
detail of that,
but-
but what they did not appear to be needed for the entire, this
The
present
entire,
year.
this fiscal 24 school
Right.
year. Yes. Okay.
And part of that was the schools had also put in $350,000 more from their out of district
The free
student
cash.
fund
They
and
call it
likewise.
School choice, they call it.
School choice
School
funds.
choice,
Yeah.
right, or, yeah, excuse me, school choice and circuit breaker, a combination of money that totaled 350,000, which was their own money. So that basically provided them, the funds that they needed to, make sure that they didn't have exposure without any funds available for that. So I mean, good faith, the whole point is that if it's not still needed, we should not be accountable for the 383,000. If we are, I mean, if you're going back, I mean, you were already, if we have to put in that 383,000, we're well past, we're actually probably at we're probably just past the overall levy of 4% than we were for last year. I mean, last year we went to 4%. I think this will put us just over 4%. So we were already, and actually, again, like you said, $0 extra. I mean, not talking about level services for their budget, this level dollars, we're already looking at the equivalent to slightly more of a property tax increase than last year. And we're not even talking about any additional money to the schools. Well, in my opinion, they didn't have to use that 383,000 for out of district special education. What are they, what are they using for, and what could they use it now for if we're gonna be on the hook for it?
Correct. I'd also like to get something on the record too about excess levy capacity, because there seems to be a complete lack of understanding on what excess levy capacity is and what it means. Excess levy capacity means we are not taxing residents to the full extent that we can under the provisions of what is known as Proposition 2.5. That does not mean we have that money sitting there somewhere. That does not mean the town is taking it every year and not giving it to the school. That simply means we are not using it. We are going up by 2.5% every year, but there were years when we had significant new growth, or I can't speak to the past, but there were years when there was excess capacity that could have been taken that was not taken due to conservative budgeting and trying to stay within our means. So one of the questions that came through the last couple of days from the school committee was, in Berlin, the excess levy capacity is 1.6 million with an override capacity of 9 million. Why are the schools only getting less than the previous year, meaning none of the excess levy capacity? So my response to that is that tapping into the excess levy capacity means taxing above and beyond a 2.5% increase annually, which increases tax bills beyond expected annual increases for residents. We don't tap into excess levy capacity on the town side because it simply harms our residents. We budget conservatively within our existing means. So I just want that out there, that it is not sitting there somewhere. It is not being taken by the town and not given to the schools. It is simply untouched and untaken. And should it be taken, taxes go up.
Right, and the other point too is because we used $383,000 of free cash last year, if we're on the hook to have to give them 383,000, that reduces that 1.6 million right there
Correct.
by nearly 25%. So that alone would take up nearly 25% of our excess levy capacity.
Correct.
What would the tax consequence of that be?
Well, so this was the we'll have to see how it, because
Want me to
you
pull my
always have
property
to,
tax calculator?
right, you always have to bring in, what's your new growth?
Yeah.
What
No,
additional funds and stuff like
Right.
that.
You're
So
talking about
last
just
year-
another 200 grand.
Right, so last year it worked out such that it was about 67. So when we got the 2.5% that, to the overall budget, that included using what we did for, the extra 2.5% levy, plus those other funds of new
Mhm.
growth and other things like the, excise tax, stuff like that. It turned out that it was approximately every 0.5% we went up, it was $67,000, which that way we ended up going to, which was about $200,000. We gave extra to the schools, which added an extra 1.5, which got us to that 4. So
And what did that translate into tax dollars? Do you remember?
Wasn't it like 600 for the average?
No, but by the increment that you were describing, because I'm curious, and the only reason I ask is because the average single family home value has also gone up 100,000. So it's gonna be even more. And I just wanted to add
So
that.
so our
Exactly.
residential real estate taxes, you're gonna see it hit anyway because median values of homes are going up. And then if you think about the normal 2.5%, but then if you're gonna layer this on, use of excess levy is going to increase taxes by 1%. And I'm
Exactly.
gonna try to dig out what we figured, what the value was on an average home last year, because we spent a lot of time talking about
If you
that.
look right here, Mary, I
Oh, you've
pulled it
got
out
it?
just for
You've got it.
200,000,
Okay.
okay? So, but let's talk first about the fact that your home values on average went up. For the average single family home in Berlin, it went up $100,000. So your taxes are gonna go up just because of that, as Mary just said. So the average single family tax bill,
Sorry, is that median or average?
average, single
Average.
family assessed, and that's single family home, that doesn't include condos or anything else. The average single family tax bill in FY 24 is $8,330. And that is based on the average single-family home being valued at $653,359. Okay? So first, you have your reset because your value's gone up, which I can't calculate because everybody's value has
So
gone up
even
different.
if we had a 0% tax increase at town meeting,
Unless something has happened to seriously devalue your home, you're gonna see an increase.
Well,
Yeah.
well, technically, I mean, the clarification needs to be put on there. This is one of the biggest confusing pieces that people have. People see their house is going up in value.
Tax
They
rate
think we're
goes down.
taxing just overall just more, and there's more money being collected by the town, which is not true.
Correct.
What it is as your property goes up, if everything was a equivalent, of course, we have more for the commercial than for the
That's
residential.
the other wrinkle.
But if everything was exactly the same, if everybody's property went up 10% and everybody taxed, the tax bills would not change. Because what it is it's your percentage of the overall valuation that your property has is determines what percentage of the levy you're going to pay. So just because a percentages go up, if everybody's went up equivalently, and we didn't also have the split tax rates, there would be zero change. There would be the same, I mean, you'd have the same percentage ownership of the levy.
Right,
Sorry,
but that doesn't
But what-
happen.
Zero change in dollars or
You
zero
know, because
change?
zero change in actual dollars, because,
Actual.
right,
Tax
because-
The
dollars
tax
paid.
rate goes down.
right, because it comes out, it's like, if you had.
Oh, I get
Right,
it.
right, if you had, the
I get
levy
it.
was $100,000, you had 10 homes, they're all valued at the same amount, everybody pays 10,000. If everybody's home goes up the same percentage amount, and you need to pay that 100,000, everybody would still pay the same $10,000 each. But what happens is, you have commercial properties that are going down, residential going up, or they're basically going up much faster than commercial is. So all of a sudden, if yours is going up much faster than the other peers, you are going to have a bigger share of property valuation, so therefore your share of the levy is bigger.
Correct.
And of course, that gets complicated with the tax rates too, because it's not, just because commercial changes a bit, because they already pay a different percentage. And they have a different weighting basically to that.
Right, that's a great way to explain. I mean, it's important to also mention as part of that, that's why you cannot use the tax rate as a determination of how much a town is taxing. You could have a very wealthy town taxing at $12.
Yeah, it's
on
one of the most
1,000.
meaningless.
It means
numbers.
nothing.
Yeah,
And then you go,
it's-
well, how come my
it's
town's
just a
taxing
math
$20?
calculation
It
at the
means
end.
nothing.
Right, but people have the perception that if the town is collecting more money from them as their price of their home goes up, which also means like in 2008, when everything was collapsing, they don't understand why their taxes aren't going down. But if everybody's is going down the same percentage, you still have the same percentage ownership of the levy
Right.
based on your property value.
But it's not, because we're seeing,
Good way to
especially
put
with
it.
a split tax rate, we're seeing commercial devaluation. So the residents are picking up a larger percentage of that overall valuation in town, which lends itself to the conversation that perhaps at some point we may want to go back to a single tax rate when we do the calculations, because largely because of the millions of dollars in devaluation from the mall. I mean, that's really, it may not make sense some year in the future to have a split tax rate anymore, because it may not be benefiting the residents, it might be actually harming the residents.
But that's exactly the point we were saying about the residential's going up so much, except they're going up so much relative to the commercial properties. And that's why,
Exactly.
if everything was static, the residential is taking on a bigger burden of that levy than the commercial.
Yep. Well, and so you're gonna have that jump, like you said, from the get-go, because of how everything shifts out when you do it, and you have to, this is estimate, because we're basing it on 24, and we're talking about 25, and we're not running it through the split tax rate. So when you look at the fact that you're gonna have an initial jump, then we add 2.5% plus new growth. If you add another $200,000 on top of that, that's about another $120 that you're adding to the average single family home. More if your home is worth more than 650, less if your home is worth less than 650. So, and that's a real estimate, but basically the way that the calculator works, you can estimate that for every $200,000, or if you want to make it even simpler, for every $100,000, you're going up $60 on your tax bill for the average single family home. Obviously, if you own a $1.5 million home, it's different. If your home is valued at $250,000, it's different. So I just putting all of those caveats out there.
And again, it's just an
Estimate.
estimate.
Right. I mean, the one number that you.
Where's my flashing
you-
estimate?
The one number you can put out there is what percentage increase of the levy. So basically you can go back to your
Yeah.
spreadsheet there.
Yep.
Look at what is the whole number of 2.5% over the levy previously, because obviously
Yep.
in order coming up with our balanced budget, we are spending every dollar of that amount, right?
Correct.
So that's what will be, which I think is gonna be like 370.
373, 573,
373,
talking about?
573.
2.5% over previous year.
So it's
Yeah.
4%, brings you just about to another $200,000 roughly. So we'd be going up by 4% again, just like
Right,
last year.
yeah, it's gonna be very similar last year. I think I did the calculator, it was on like 67,000. Basically, you can just take that 373 divided by 5. And that'll be how much per
I can't do that in my
0.5%.
head. You're way better than me at this
Oh,
time
I'm
of
not
night.
doing it, I'm not-
So that,
Um,
all right, so it would go up as much as it did last year. Does that mean that?
No, well, yes and no.
I know, it's always that way, isn't it?
So it's about every $74,600 increase we add to that we increase our budget by from where we are now with a level funded budget from the revenue.
Mhm.
Every additional $74,600, the only place it can come from is from the levy, unless we change some other type of.
I am I am
Right.
so aggressive with local receipt and new
Right.
growth.
Right, so it only can come from the levy. So let's round it to 75,000 for easy numbers.
Mhm.
Every 75,000 will take you up another 0.5 percentage point. So if you add another
your percent tax.
75,000 to the budget. So let's take the 383,000 that schools say that we should be obligated
Yep.
to.
That
That,
in here.
if you divide that by I'll do the 74,600, the actual number.
You're doing like real math. I'm using a calculator,
Mhm,
just
mhm.
putting that out there. It's 9:30 at night,
He's got
so
a calculator there.
Yeah.
let's see if you come up with the same as me. Don't look.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Was it 383? Divided by, was it 74,600? That would add an extra. Sec. 5, well, that's 5 times of the 0.5, so you have to divide by 2. So it would add an extra 2.6 percentage points, so you'd be at a 5.1 levy increase.
Or in dollars, about $230, just for that 383. It would add another $230 to the average single family.
And that's because
Tax
we took
bill.
out of free cash last year,
Correct.
so it didn't hit the tax.
But the key point to me would be comparing for last year, we went to 4%.
Oh, you're saying we'd have to go to
We-
5.
We would be at 5.1%. Again, and that's not giving the schools a single extra penny
Yeah.
above their assessment. Tohoto, exactly the same amount that they got last year, and giving them, if they're saying we're on the hook for that extra 383,000 for BMS, they would add the extra 383,000, which is what they're saying was the assessment, and they would be right,
But don't
no
forget, we're
doubt
already
about-
giving them 178. So you could subtract that off and to level them. So then it would really only be
You
200,000.
Correct, there is that, correct, the 178 would right, that would give them, they would be at that number plus 178 if it was if I did it at 5 point, it'd be 5.1%.
And that would make them exactly at where they're saying they were at in 24.
So, I mean, if they, like I say, come through that, I mean, one of my first thoughts on that. First of all, to me, it's like we negotiated this, right? I mean, it's like, so first of all, they would have totally, if we're put on the hook for that, I mean, I'll have no trust to with anybody at the school committee to negotiate ever again with this bunch. Because basically it come down to what I would look at is saying this, zero out their capital assessment requests, which is one of the thoughts I had, zero them out and say, okay, take the free cash from the capital budget, that's about just over $200,000, and just throw that towards the 383, they would get zero extra on their capital. I know it's an ugly thing, I'm not saying.
Well, only because it
we'll
kicks the
approve it.
can down the road on the operating, right? We
Because now
still
you
have
give
to
them
adjust it
more
in
free cash.
26.
So can I ask what is probably a stupid question, but
No,
let me
sure.
give it a shot. So when we look at our
You're not sharing.
yellow
Oh,
lines there, lines for, you know,
Oh,
the
sorry.
Berlin
Hang on.
Memorial and the Tohoto assessment. We're just assuming that we're gonna add 2.5% over fiscal 24 when we come up with our fiscal 25 budget.
Mhm.
Why don't we back that 2.5% down until we X out this uncertainty on the 200,000?
Cause it doesn't even cover the 383.
If you wipe out the 2.5, But it helps, doesn't it?
It's 373, it covers everything but 10,000 of it.
No. Oh, if you wipe everything out?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the 2.5 was 373,573.
so
But
then
you
Kristen,
can't really look at free cash. I don't think I don't ever want to give them free cash for operating again.
No, I'm just saying, we're just voting on what's in the best interest of the town. And we have this uncertainty about whether or not the 382,000 in free cash will be included legally, you know, as a matter, you've asked the question, the town council, we don't have the state assessment or certification back. So this is our freedom of choice of what kind of operating budget do we propose to the schools? What do we vote on? So why don't we take the 2.5% increase out?
Well,
And that gets
unfortunately-
us pretty close to level.
Well, the 2.5% increase, all that does is,
It's only on the operating.
that takes the rest of the budget too outside of the schools. I mean.
No, I mean, just those lines. Change the numbers in those lines.
Then we're
But
gonna have
we
to,
can't take them lower. I mean, if we're on the whole hook for that 383,
That's
That
what I'm
because we
saying.
can't take it
Just,
forward.
just leave the 383 in there, but don't increase it at all.
or we don't have enough to fund the 383.
oh yeah,
That's the
that's
problem.
only 172,000.
We're 200 grand short to fund just the 383.
So
Cause at the 2.5%.
what am I missing? Why are we increasing it from 24 to 25?
You're not,
You're actually not, according to, if the 383 is included, we're underfunding, which we legally can't do.
So I'd like to close out that possibility, right? But why are we why does the column, it's a
You may
simple,
have-
I need to be.
You're
sim-
saying you don't want to give them 2.5%.
Yes, thank you,
Okay,
yes.
but we would have to set
'Cause
aside
current-
that funding in case we had to give it toward the 383,000, because I wouldn't want to raise taxes by
But-
383.
No,
Because
no.
Technically, what it is that the 3.924
Yes.
is actually without the 300 from free cash.
Understood.
So if we were to add that in for free cash, it's gonna come to more than
So-
using the.
so it is a stupid
3.9
question.
No, it's not.
No, it's not a
question.
stupid question. I understand what you're saying, but
If you-
unfortunately, where it gets us further away from where we might need to be.
So if we had to do that, there wouldn't be any 2.5%. It would be,
383 to get us to where we were last year, to be level funded at BMS and Tohoto.
Right, in the 2.5%, going by the assessments that we had calculated,
6 and 8.
it's only a small amount
because it would
anyways.
come out, if you add the 300 to the 3.9.
You know what, maybe this will
But
help.
right now, the
Let
2.5%
me go
off
back
the
to this.
assessment.
No, I'm adding up
Total $100.
dollars change, and it's only about half of the 381.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty
Can you share that
so,
screen? Can you share that screen?
I hear what you're saying, though, just level fund it and it's done, and we just added the free cash from
Done
last year
BSC.
into
Now it's there,
taxation
thank you.
this year.
So I
So
don't-
here's the, oh, sorry, go ahead.
'Cause it
I'm
was
just
supposed to be
confused. So
temporary
what
thing.
is there, I mean,
Yeah, special ed.
to say that you
Right.
can't
They have
ever, the,
leftovers.
so basically their budgets can only ever go up.
To go towards the.
Or be level.
Did you see the?
Or be
thing I
level.
said about the state?
And it's the way that it's
Reimbursement.
written in the warrant
About
that
The emergency reimbursement.
we gave them 4.6.
So it'd be a
Oh,
number.
I'm sorry, we gave them 4.3. So they're saying that was our assessment. Even though it doesn't, their argument is that the funding source doesn't matter. It's
Okay.
the bottom line amount.
I
that
don't
we
care
gave
about the
them.
funding source. We had an agreement. I mean, we
Okay,
even
fair
read the
enough.
agreement. I mean, it's not just a funding source there. I mean, they're just not being genuine. I mean, Michael Topman was the one that was involved in that negotiation.
Yep.
He knows that. He should have, if they're not familiar with that from the rest of the school committee, it means he would have held that from them, and it's their own fault for being ignorant of that situation. But Michael Topman was involved in that negotiation, and they should be bound to honor that negotiation. I mean, it's really, I mean, clear as can be to
Yeah.
me.
It's a trust issue. I agree. And I don't feel that you can negotiate in good faith going forward because that's been broken.
It's been broken big time,
So-
yes.
So,
It's,
so guys, what was printed in the warrant is this number?
What was printed in the warrant,
Does
what
that
we
matter?
voted at
But the motion included the free cash, because remember, we brokered that deal after the warrant was printed.
Well, sure, but did
What matters is Eloise's motion, Eloise's
What did the motion
motions.
say?
I'll show you.
Yeah,
It said 4.3. Because it included the free cash, but it broke it out.
that's
'Cause
what I
was
mean, it
raise and
broke it out.
appropriate X amount. and
Yeah, it broke it
Yep.
out.
Let me show you.
transfer from free cash.
I'd be surprised if this is a straightforward question.
It's not, that's why I got legal counsel involved.
Yeah, okay, okay.
But if you look at the proceedings from, I'll pull it up here, 2023.
Yeah.
Hold on, don't look for a minute.
Thank you for the warning.
Here we go.
And share the screen.
She's working on.
Gosh, so many things you want me to do all at once.
It's after 9 o'clock,
Uh,
it's almost 10 o'clock.
Sorry, hold on. Oh, now it went back to the top. Really? Where?
Right there,
Oh, in there?
you're right there.
Oh, okay.
And we have to go up just a little bit.
There we go, yeah, I see.
That's Tohoto. You gotta go up one more, a little bit. There we go.
Because the deal was all on the Berlin Memorial situation,
It was on
and it
the-
didn't pull in Tohoto at all,
Yeah.
right?
So
Yeah.
see the way that the line, so see it. And if this is a legal technicality, then KP Law didn't catch it. So,
But what's worse is it's like we use a legal technicality against us
correct.
for it to suck more money, and a significant amount of money. I mean, that amount of money is such that, I mean, even you basically are gonna be starting at, I mean, again, not giving them extra penny. Well, look like in this case, we'd be giving constantly
I
giving
didn't get a chance to
383,000.
see that language.
Oh, it's coming back. I'm just sharing it so Cliff can see it too.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
So basically, the vote was
You're right.
to raise and appropriate 3.9 and to transfer from free cash the 383 for a total, if you look at the total line item assessment, it's 4,307,149.
Mhm.
I still don't take that to mean that that is our assessment, because initially, when the school came with their first numbers, remember they were saying that our assessment was 4.7? And I said, but you can't hold us accountable for revenues that you put in, so they backed off to 4.3. I'm still not understanding. I understand the trust and the negotiation part, but I'm not really understanding the legal footing either, and
So does our council understand that we never got a certified letter of the assessment?
Mhm.
They know that, they know that. Well, they were part of
Well,
it.
we received a letter at the in July, was it July or May?
But at the,
July. It
at
was
the point
after.
of town meeting, there was no,
Correct.
there was no certified letter with the assessment, no understanding really.
Yes, and that has been shared. I shared the letter
Okay.
we did receive, which is dated after town meeting.
Right, okay. I mean,
Yes, so we
if
have,
this is in a gray area, that's helpful.
I mean, unfortunately, if it's gonna have to come down to technicalities, then we have a technicality on our side as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also like,
This is outrageous.
so the other piece, can you go to Tohoto?
Absolutely.
On there. So first of all, we have, uh, first of all, this is the last these are the papers I think Julie sent us from when you were
Yeah.
there with this.
Are you talking about in the budget or in the town
So
meeting?
go to the budget.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, not
Okay.
about last year. So on the
I don't have
Tohoto
much
side,
there.
well, we've always said approximately 1/3, 2/3, but right now it's Berlin's share is 34.84%, Boylston 65.16%. And right now, for their level targeted funds, for what they consider level services, they're basically having, if I can read this correctly, it's a total of $935,544 total at Tohoto, which is a share of Boylston, 604,632, and Berlin at 330,912. Now, of course, no matter what, if Boylston cuts a certain percentage, a certain amount, Berlin has to get cut because these percentages can't change. So this is a key piece too, where Boylston sits in their finances. So this was the email from was her Karen McGahey. I think she's on the finance committee for Boylston. And basically it's attached this document. It says, last year they didn't tax up to their levy capacity, but used $1.2 million of free cash to fund the school's budget. This year we could tax up to 2.2 million more than we taxed last year with no increases to the school's budget. We first have to tax the town for the shortfall of 1.2 million that was created last year. So when they look at their 2.2 excess levy,
That's outrageous.
they automatically have to take away 1.2 million because they need to tax the residents for what they gave them last year,
In free cash.
which leaves 1 million in excess levy capacity for anything above what they already funded there. And they're basically saying they're gonna split that with the schools, 50,000 total for the Boylston schools. Now, right now, just at their level, they're asking for Boylston 604,632, which is 104,000 more than the total they want to give to the schools. Plus Boylston Elementary is also already at a level asking for 386,792 to keep so-called their level services. So Boylston is heading for an override if they want to even come close to any of these numbers. Otherwise, we're gonna be looking at, if they don't pass their override and get their money in Boylston, there will be a significant reduction of what they want going on at Tohoto. Tohoto will get absolutely hammered.
Right.
So for at least what they're pushing for here. So on the Tohoto side, it's going to be heavily controlled by Boylston because they're asking for a lot of money that they just do not have.
I think I followed it.
Yeah.
If they use $1.2 million from excess, from what? What was it?
Free
They use
cash.
1.2 million for free cash.
Didn't we use free cash? So does that
383,000.
mean their budget went up $1.2 million automatically?
Well, yeah, ours also, our excess levy capacity.
No, I mean, this argument.
No,
They're
no,
making
they-
the same
I
argument.
don't know where they took the 1.2 million. They just said they used 1.2 million.
I
I don't know
thought it said
where.
free cash.
She
For
did
free
say
cash.
that.
I don't know if that
saw
was 1.2 million just overall to their whole budget, or they
Oh,
did
I see
it
what you're
specifically at the
saying.
schools. I don't
Okay.
know that. But either way, they have 1.2 million that they used in free cash. Which, gave the town residents a tax break, a one-time tax break. But now, they're looking at a huge increase without even giving a single dollar to their schools. And their schools, of course, have a much bigger ownership of Tohoto and, huge dollar amounts here. So there is a much bigger hurdle the schools have to tackle in Boylston than they do with us. Ours is pretty much the front and center is the thing with BMS at this $383,000.
Which would probably explain why they're not coming to meetings. They're focused on Boylston. There's a larger deficit there, although I would argue, and I said this to the select board Monday night, we can do an override. The select board is the only body that can put an override on the warrant. And I recommend that they do, as a caveat, that if there is a substitute motion made to pass the school budget or a motion made to pass the school budget, and I'm still working out how that would look on the warrant right now, whether it would be two budgets side by side, or if it would be a requested and a recommended. The override would get the most number of eyes on the town and from the town on that override. And I think the fairest way to do this, because as I've said before, town meeting, you get a small crowd. It's what, 200
It's
people
actually an interesting concept.
deciding for
I
everyone.
agree.
And it's
I agree.
7:30 at night.
I agree.
Senior citizens make up 34% of our population. Many of them don't drive after dark. Parents have commitments with their children on a weeknight. It's a Monday night.
Yeah.
However, if you open it up to an election, you have an all-day thing where
Oh,
people can
absolutely.
come whenever they can. And I just think that's the fairest way to do it.
I think so too. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So anyhow, also, I was gonna say, this is just so you know, I redid the spreadsheet a little bit just to kind of clean it up and make it a little easier. The operating deficit between what they've asked and what we've recommended is 1,240,555. The capital deficit between what they've asked and what we can really give is 1,131,345. And what that translates to in terms of actual dollars that we would be giving them would be an additional 178,270. That's where that number keeps coming from. And then potentially 465,462 for capital. That is really the only funding that is technically available. And that would be giving them all of the funding that is available. And as I've stated before, and I'm echoing the capital committee, the requests were small on the town side because we're frugal, and that funding is being put aside for FY26 when we have the facilities study back and we see all of the issues we have with the buildings. So there was a desire to not necessarily spend the full amount this year, but roll it over.
And for the departments that got their budgets in on time for capital, they had come to meetings and negotiated and gave prioritization list. And some of the things they requested did get pushed off to the following year. So there was a dialogue involved in that whole process. It wasn't just capital reading some documents and saying, okay, you get this, you don't get that.
Right, so no member of the school committee ever came to any capital planning meeting.
In fact, I don't think they ever even got a direct.
No, that's not
Documentation.
true. We did have
Oh, yeah, that's right. The last one, Nancy.
Nancy Koniski and Lisa Mayer came
Mhm.
to the capital meeting. They had numbers, but there was additional information requested by the capital committee that has not been provided, which is descriptions of what the line items are, because there's things
Yeah.
like instructional
Yeah.
IT, which it just, the
Yeah.
one line description doesn't really, or title doesn't explain what those items are.
Yeah, but the problem is they didn't,
Sorry.
the capitals does this work in January.
Right, yeah,
And-
exactly. The point is, I mean, we had schools came in December. We had
Yeah.
two representatives
Thank
from
you
the
very
school committee, and of course, the superintendent and the finance person, Nancy. And they were invited to attend the first week of February. They pushed that back to the last week of February. They then pushed that, and then we got that pushed back to the first week of March. And basically, we're
Yeah.
here with no basically, they put their head in the sand and ignored about anything about what the finances are available from the town. It's like they don't want to hear the bad news, so they just go about creating pie in the sky budgets that have no sense to reality of what their funds are available to the town.
So Scott, let me put a little clarification. I agree with you, but put a little clarification on the word they, which is the school district did come and talk to us and did respond to some early requests about trying to figure out the revenues on the school side of things. The school committee has been a brick wall with respect to dialogue with this committee anyway.
Yes,
all
So
around.
unresponsive to the select board to what Kristen has asked. So it really puts us in a very difficult position because we would like to be in that dialogue. And we're ready and willing and it's not happening.
Well,
So
To that point, I received an email at 10:02 PM last night inviting me to attend a budget meeting tomorrow at 9:30 in the morning. Unfortunately, I have prior commitments. My schedule books out a lot in advance this time of year with town meeting coming up. And I was unavailable. I did offer an alternative time, but after speaking with the select board chair at this point, the votes have really been taken predominantly. The budget is going to the school committee Tuesday night. It is due to us Thursday. There is no time to make any changes really at this point. And I'm sorry, but I'm not staying up for 2 days straight to try to negotiate a deal. It's just not, it's not going to happen. And so I don't feel that even though there is an invite now, it is too late.
Mhm.
And I don't feel that a meeting would be productive at this time.
And I want to add to that, this is not the experience that we've had in this committee. Scott was here years ago. I've been here for a while. This is not the experience we've had with prior school committees. So, it's been a dialogue. We've been able to work things out. And when there's a need, we've been able to respond to it, but it's not happening right now.
Their process is foreign to me. I spent 6 years on the school committee and whatever process it is they're using, I have no bloody idea what they're doing. No, do they know what they're doing, quite frankly? They're not using their superintendent and finance person to guide them. They're not using the finance committee to guide them. They're not using anyone to guide them. They're working in a bubble that ultimately they can't be successful. And there's nothing you and I can do about that right now.
no. I think the only thing left to do is on the last items that we have not covered, which is lines 179, 182, which is going with our interpretation of the assessment of 3,924,434 at BMS, using 2.5% on those numbers, which Kristen had put in was her recommendation to do a motion for those, which is how we try to do it. I mean,
I would agree
think
that we need to do that.
just,
Yeah,
104.
It doesn't help us to take out the 2.5.
No, it doesn't, because ultimately we could have to pay even more than
but
that.
on top of it, at this point,
And if we don't,
Oh, well,
well, first of all, we can change any of these numbers, and also we're
We can
telling them a
vote down.
dollar amount. We're not, no, if it comes and they say the 383, it has to be counted in that base number. It's not like we're adding that they would then be able to take that 2.5% on top of that, because what we're voting on is a pure number.
yes, understood.
yeah,
The only one is that we'll be voting on a
Understood.
2.5%
You're
number
right, Scott.
on
You're right.
Tohoto side.
the 179,000,
one
what
side
that
of it.
number is.
Yeah,
You're right.
so
I think that's right, Scott.
I don't think there's any more to discuss on it. To just give our vote on that and.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll make the motion to approve line items 179 through 182.
104.
Excuse me. Thank you. 104 through 107.
One moment.
Yeah, 104 through 107 as recommended by the town administrator
And the select board.
and the select board.
Second,
Okay, any other discussion?
Nope.
All right, roll call, Scott, aye.
Mary, I.
Cliff eye.
Julie, I.
All right, passes 4-0.
wow. It's almost 10.
And I know it's late, but
But we had the warrant.
no, I
Oh,
think we can do the warrant next week.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
It needs to be finalized though by April 1st. So we really only have 2 more weeks to do it, but I think we can get it done in 2 weeks.
How many articles are there? in the-
32, but you don't vote on all 32.
Right.
I didn't add up how many you vote on.
Prior to expedite, will you be able to,
In the drive.
oh, it's in the, well.
I can't,
perfect.
yeah.
So if you wanna
Perfect
look
answer,
at
I was
it,
gonna say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
that might be good.
Yeah, and if you have individual questions, you can always call me or email me, if something's confusing or you're just not sure about something or you want to go over it individually, I'm happy to do that as well.
So is there a draft warrant in the Google Drive?
And there is,
Oh, you're awesome.
I tried.
Thank you.
So
Thank you so
if we're
much.
gonna end, if you would indulge me for a moment, I think that our conversation might be confusing to the outside world.
Yes.
Or the average viewer who's watching this that doesn't understand municipal finance. So I would like the opportunity to just read you something, if you'll indulge me a minute, that I put together for the select board that really outlines how we got here this year. And it's a bit chronological, which I think would be helpful for the residents to understand. We just took a big vote and I made a recommendation, the select board made a vote, you made a vote to do a 2.5% increase. I feel that some people could take that as a show of non-support toward the schools, and it's not that at all. So I just would like to have a moment to explain if I could. The way that I started this out was I said that the Berlin FinCom has concluded their budget hearings. The Berlin-Boylston Regional School District declined to attend both their originally scheduled and rescheduled hearing in March. The district has also declined to attend the Capital Planning Committee meeting on March 14th that was scheduled specifically to review the late submittals from the district. For reference, submittals were due October 31st, and the town received a formal proposal this past Tuesday, March 5th. According to the district, the town will receive their final budget on March 20th, which is 2 days before the deadline to submit of March 22nd. This does not allow any time for discussion between the town and the district to attempt to arrive at a number that works for both entities in light of limited available funding. We have delayed our budget process by over a month on the town side to accommodate the late submittals from the district as we recognize the critical importance of providing vital funding for our students. However, the lack of information and refusal to attend meetings, coupled with a completely different and less transparent process used by the district, has made arriving at a coordinated budget impossible. For the first time ever, at least in modern history, there will be 2 budgets on the town meeting warrant. The district budget we receive on or before March 22nd, and the FinCom recommended budget, which provides a 2.5% operating budget increase for the district over FY24 for a total increase of $178,270. This number has been provided to the schools and leaves an over $2.1 million deficit as the schools are requesting over 21% increase at Berlin Memorial School and an over 18% increase at Tohoto. A significant amount of this increase comes from above level service requests. I am unsure at this time as to how the Capital Committee will proceed with their school recommendations. Capital has been given a list of project names without descriptions or supporting quotes as requested, so they can understand what each project entails. The total requested capital funding from the district is $1,596,807. For reference purposes, per the town's free cash policy, there is only $533,362 in funding available this year for all capital projects from both the town and the school. As a proud local public school graduate, Leicester High School, class of 2000, the value of public education and my desire to give our children the very best and prepare them for the future could not be more of a priority. I have expressed my frustration with this process to both the school administration and the school committee in hopes that the district will change their process moving forward and begin to work with the town again, as their failure to do so is extremely disappointing for and detrimental to our children and our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's excellent, Kristen, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll be running for office in 2025.
No, and
I had to get all my thoughts down because I just was like, how did we get here? So thank you for indulging me.
And I want to add a little PS to that, if I might, is that I've been tracking what what comes to me was published, things that are in the newspaper or DESI reports, that sort of thing. These schools in our little district, Berlin, Boylston Regional School District, are in the top quartile in ranking in terms of the quality of the education, both state level and nationally. You know, Massachusetts has some of the best in the country, best schools, public schools in the country. So our students, without a lot of these bells and whistles that are on the table, they're getting a good education. And I want to again distinguish what's going on in the school district from what the school committee is doing in terms of the budgeting process. Because I want to put a vote out to support, you know, what the district has done historically, and I think can continue to do with the kind of budgets that the kind of assessments that both towns had given them. And historically, when you take a long run at it, Berlin's been a little more generous with the money in the elementary school than Boylston's been, but that's, you know, the towns are different, their financial situations are different. And I think it's really important for us to be fiscally conservative, to be fiscally responsible. It gets reflected in what it costs us to borrow money in all kinds of ways. And, you know, we can prepare for emergencies in an orderly way. We don't have to be chasing our tails. And we have a history in Berlin of doing that. I'd like to be continuing that history. You know, I take it very seriously when I sit in this seat. And I know plenty of people in town that are really struggling to pay their taxes as they sit now. And, you know, I know there's a significant population that uses our food pantry. So this is a serious thing in people's lives. And it doesn't take anything away from educating the students. I think we have a track record that shows that we're doing a good job of it. So, but your summary, thank you, Kristen, because
Yes, thank you.
Yes,
yeah,
thank you,
very
Kristen.
much.
Thank you for indulging me. I'm just extremely concerned about the direction we're headed because I've seen what happens when it becomes a town versus school situation. It tears a town apart. I just don't want to see that happen here. This is too good of a town.
All right, so I think we're done with business. So motion to adjourn.
Second,
All right, Scott, aye.
Aye, aye.
Cliff, aye.
Julia.
Right,